Okay, so I am going to show you how to make this picture happen. I was actually surprised. I've been doing weddings for about 3 years now, and usually your wedding rings aren't very easy to, make do what you want. A lot of times you have to fiddle around with them for a while to get them to sit right, especially when they're not soldered together. So I was actually really surprised at how easy it was to make my ring stay in between the high heels. It seems like the diamond, depending on how big it is heavier. So mine kind of tipped over to the side a little bit. But you can always use fishing line or, something like that that's clear or real thin. And you can edit that out really easy in Photoshop. You just, would edit out your line over your background. But if you can't get it to sit right and you can't get it just to do what you want, you can actually Photoshop it really, really easy. So there's a couple different pictures I had taken. I did this one, which is more of like a silhouette style. I didn't edit any of these yet. These are just straight off the camera. So obviously you can make this darker and more of a silhouette. And then I just took a normal bright one so you'd be able to see better. And then when I did my picture, this was actually my setup. I used my softbox as the background here, you can see, and then I just used a stool, put a fuzzy rug over, and then, my shoes and my ring. And my ring isn't attached to anything, it just stayed like that. So I was really surprised because I thought it was going to be really tricky to get it to stay, because they usually are. And then here's kind of like a pullback, so you can kind of see how it was set up. Okay, so the first thing you can do is obviously, depending on your background and stuff, you may have to clean it up. If there's, like, for example, down here you can see my rug's hairy and whatever, but for this purpose I don't really care. And so what you're going to do, what's really important to do, especially with this kind of picture, is make sure before you take the picture of the shoes, make sure you put the ring there so you get the right spacing up here at the heels, so it's easier to fill in that ring because you're going to have your spacing correct. You're not going to have your shoes too close and then your ring's going to be out of proportion. So that's the first thing I would recommend, is to make sure that your ring would fit in between your heels. So you're going to obviously take a picture of your heels, then you're going to want to take a picture of your ring too. And if you can, you'll want to try and get it on the same backdrop. I obviously couldn't because I was using my soft boxes, but this will work for this purpose. So once you get your main image cleaned up and, all your levels adjusted, all that kind of stuff, then you can go, and what you're actually going to do is just take your lasso tool and you're going to cut around your ring, because you're actually going to cut it out and then put it in the other picture. So you could just kind of like sloppy cut it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can also use, your marquee tool here or your magnetic lasso or whatever you want to do. So you're going to cut or copy it out of here, and then you're going to paste it in here. And you can see my ring is obviously huge compared to these shoes because how far back I was taking the picture wasn't exactly right, but that's okay because we can resize it. So you're going to resize it to what you think it should look like, which we'll say that'll be good for now. Now, if you're not familiar with what layers are in Photoshop, there's different layers that you can overlay on your pictures. And with your layers, what happens is if you have a layer and you erase part of it, your background shows through. So you can see my shoe through the little portion that I erased here. So that's actually how you're going to do this. It's super easy. So you're going to zoom in real close on your ring section that you just put in there. And you're going to take your eraser and you're just going to erase all the extra stuff here. And I think that my ring is actually going to be too small, so I'm going to have to resize it again. But you're just going to erase, erase, erase. And you want to make sure you're not erasing your background layer, because if you do that, that's what happens, and we don't want that. We want to make sure it's that ring layer. So as you can see, I erased the shoe. So we're just going to actually put that back. And then if you notice you are erasing your background layer, then you're going to just click on your layer here, your new layer. You can see it's layer 1 on mine. So we're just going to erase, 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 erase. And you're going to get in there and erase all this. And then you're going to do the center too, because you don't obviously want the backdrop in here. So you're just going to erase, 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 erase. I think I just chopped off part of my ring, so I'm actually going to put that back in there and then make this a little bit smaller. And this can be kind of tedious, so you just want to make sure you get your edges clean. And my cat is getting in the background. He wants to be famous. So obviously my edges aren't very clean in the center, but obviously if I was doing this for a client, it would be clean. So you're just going to go in, oopsie, I just chopped off part of my diamond tail. And you're going to go around, clean up all these edges with your eraser. Obviously that looks horrible because it needs cleaned up a lot more. But I'm not going to clean it up for this purpose. And then you would resize it to fit in between the heels. Oops. See how I'm on my background layer, so I actually need to go to my main layer that I'm working with this ring. And clean up, clean up, clean up. So we're just going to pretend like I have perfect edges. If you can get this to stay, it's obviously going to be easier and less editing time. But if for some reason it doesn't, then you can always do it this way, but it takes longer. So you just go and clean up your edges. A trick that I like to use if I'm doing something like this and my edges aren't like really clean, you can actually use your blur tool. So if you come down here, depending on, you know, what kind of tools and stuff you use, yours may be already there. I use my smudge tool a lot more than my blur tool. So you can come in here, make sure your blur tool is right, and you can actually just kind of blur the edges a little bit. You don't want to do it too much because you don't want to lose the focus on your subject here. But you can use a blur tool to clean up your edges anytime you copy and paste something, and if it looks a little jagged, you can go ahead and do that. So this looks about right. You could see it's bumped up to the heels here. So if you pull it back and your edges are nice and clean, you can see, actually I think it needs to come a little bit bigger because it looks like there's a little bit of a gap in between here. There's actually not, but for some reason it looks that way. So I'm going to bump it up just a little bit more and pull it back and take a look. Ah, there we go. For some reason that zoomed out funny. Let's come up here. Oops. So you can see it's in there. And then obviously, you know, you can go in and fix your colors, or if you want it to be shadowy or black and white or whatever. The other thing, if you're not familiar with using layers, one thing you'll want to learn is when you go to save this file, if you have more than one layer, like I have my background layer and then my layer 1, if I go to save it, it's going to save it as a Photoshop file. And if you do that, then you're not going to be able to open it in any program besides Photoshop. So if you give it to your client on a CD in a Photoshop file, they're going to be like, what the heck, I can't open this. I don't have Photoshop. So you want to make sure you change it to a JPEG when you save it. If you want, you can save it as a Photoshop file too. If you ever think you're going to have to go back in and edit the layers for whatever reason, then when you open it up, all your layers will stay the same, so you can manipulate them accordingly. I usually do that anytime I have any collage style photos, like my smash cake pictures and storyboards and stuff like that. So that way I don't have to, you know, go in and start new. I just save it as a layer, and then I can just cut all the pictures out of it and then put new ones in. So it saves some time. But make sure you're saving it as a JPEG if you're going to give it to someone, you know, who doesn't use Photoshop. So that's how you do it. It's pretty easy. Like I said, you can always try it. This one is straight off the camera. I didn't Photoshop that in there. I was surprised at how well it works. Another trick is with the diamond. Obviously, some rings have smaller diamonds than others, but if it's really heavy, it seems like mine wanted to lean off to the side. So what you can do is, if you can only get it in there like that, you can always cut it so you can go around the edge of the ring. And I'm using my magnetic lasso tool just to get a nice clean cut. which doesn't always work. Oopsie. Backspace. Okay. So you're just going to come in here, get that nice clean edge. Okay. And then you can actually cut this ring and then paste it. Put it back right where it was. And then you can spin it here. And you want to make sure you're on your layer over here too, because if you're on the background, obviously it's not going to work. So you can spin it and move it over to where you need it. And then you can use your eraser tool like we did before to clean up your edges. And you can see up here it's kind of messy. You can see all this stuff here that needs taken off. And the nice thing about the layers too is your layer 1, which is our ring. So that's the whole ring, and the center is on top of our background. So we can actually just take our smudge tool down here and smudge this whole background behind it. So since the ring layer is on top of your background layer, it kind of hides everything. And if you take this background layer and you hide it, you can see it looks really ugly underneath it. But since that layer 1's over top of it, you can't see it. So the background's kind of messy, but we don't care. And this actually needs pushed down too. So then you have a nice clean background and you can't tell. My ring probably needs to swing around just a little bit more though, because it's still a little crooked. And you can come in here too, because you can sort of see, if you zoom in here, you can see all this here needs kind of cleaned up because it looks like there's a gap. So we can click on our layer 1, use our eraser tool here, and kind of erase along here. And then once we know it's bumped up to the gold right here and there's still a gap, so that layer's erased on this side, you can just stretch that layer out so it meets back up to the shoe again. Or the other thing you can do is you can come to your background layer, use your clone stamp tool. Ooh, that's really big. And you can actually build up the shoe underneath, because this is going to hide all the nasty, ugly stuff under the layer. So you can see, you can build up the back of the shoe, and you can erase this extra white here on this layer because we don't want it. And then if we hide this, you can see it's all ugly again, but we don't care. And then you can take your blur tool like I had talked about before and clean up these edges if they look a little rough. This side I would clean up a little bit more too, but for this you get the idea. So then you can see it looks straight and you have your picture. So that's how you do it. Pretty easy, like I said. And I don't know if, I mean, these shoes are very glittery, so they kind of have a texture on it. So I think that kind of helped hold the ring there. If you have like satin shoes or something that's more silky, it'll probably slide off. But these shoes actually held it well. I was very surprised because that doesn't happen with wedding rings. But it's pretty easy to do. It takes a little bit of time to get your edges clean, but not too bad. So that's that. Have fun.